I guess you got to go all the way back to my introduction to graffiti here in New York in 1970. I guess that's when I came up with the name Futura 2000 and decided I was going to be a graffiti writer. In 1970, I was 15, and taking the train to school is, really when I first started seeing graffiti. I mean, obviously living in New York, at that time you started to become aware of writing on the wall or whatever, but just a fan of it and thought there was something interesting about it, a little bit dangerous, subway tunnels, and there's a little bit of a mystery, how did they do it? And so, I got into my mischievous New York teenage period. I guess I just got turned off of the educational system and was more inspired by creating an identity and a sort of reputation and getting famous, and so I completely got sucked into that whole scene, and for a couple of years I was pretty much full-time, tagger. Never really someone who did big pieces on the outside of trains at that time, but was pretty prolific at getting up and having marker with me at all times or whatever. I had a friend of mine named Ali, Mark Edmonds. He's since passed away, but he's the guy who actually got me into graffiti, and he was kind of my partner, and we started an organization called Soul Artists. September '73, we were painting a train here in the city in the #1 tunnel, and there was a fire. It was a sort of very unfortunate accident, and he was badly burned. Shortly after that, a lot of things kind of changed. My whole involvement with graffiti completely got turned off, so I wound up joining the military and just left New York. But when I came back, Mark, Ali, who had recovered from the fire, was involved in starting this second phase of the Soul Artists, which was a more legitimate kind of artists working on sort of street project / sign painting. That's when I met Hayes. Eric was part of that whole scene, and that was 1979. So that's like my reintroduction to New York, to the movement, and I witnessed once again, what was happening in the street. Obviously now what's happened is that sort of underground street movement in New York, unbeknownst to us, because we were not part of any art world movement. We were simply, these subculture icon, or not really at that time, but little outlaw hero dudes, cross over into a New York social scene where there was galleries, artists, and people wanted to have exhibitions. And then that was a transition from being an underground subway rider in New York to kind of put on the map in a way as an artist. It's become another part of continuous evolution, of the creative person, adapting to conditions and what's available, what tools you have. At one point, the marker gave way to the spray can. The spray can had to live with a brush, and sort of have to keep adapting your mediums. And then now we have this ability to share information on a completely different level. It's no longer localized to what you might see on a walk to somewhere and back, or what you might view while you're on the subway, but it's now this kind of virtual expanse, So for me as an artist, as a communicator, the real changeover for me was the 90s. It's so hard to evolve into new things when people hold on to the old things that you've done. For me, it's all about the characters that I've created, that aren't even really a big deal for me, but it's something that people, locally, in Asia, wherever I've gone, it's people gravitate to that whole universe of figures, that Mowax, Uncle, Point Man. I mean, I just hope that I can continue to catch some interesting idea or happen upon something that other people get and appreciate. I want to continue to sort of justify my place by being productive and continuously, trying to come up with something.